evening, gentlemen. Lovely morning, isn't it? Um, I, I, I would only turn this on and talk if it was relevant to art and process and broader concerns hither within that. And you know, I can wait for someone else to understand a bloody long time, and it could never happen. And yet, sometimes I feel I understand. So, part of the process of keeping what you have is to share it. And one could argue that that is a primary motivation of being bothered to share one's inner life generously, even with the world as it is. So, been beginning a new project, and certain things do come, and then dreaming of other concurrent project possibilities. And so that's a part of the way I work, is I sort of visualize contexts and I would say goals. I would say goals. There's a sort of filmic movie image of an end result that and the work is blurry in my future specting, creative visualization, if you like. The work is always a sort of misty unknown, but the feeling of being motivated to manifest in a particular place, in a particular way, in my imaginary way of being received and being allowed to broadcast in in the way that the work is reminding me to broadcast. That is what makes the work. It's sort of like saying, having a job expectation. Although, I notice the inner things, and uncorrect permission, and then I've crossed out and I've crossed out per, and it says correct mission. And I ask myself, what the bloody hell am I doing all the time? Because it's fragmenting, mangling, innately problematic trying to deal with any external agency, people in the art world. The very most basic things are often very damaging. And I don't need to go into details around the horrors of art management while developing out loud, while having vast experience and being continually humbled by a culture that maintains a certain psychic level of externalized permission, conformity, acquiescence to protocol that, the whole reason why people of difference, you could be lesbian, you could be Maori, you could be a white fellow with neurocognitive difference. You could be on the spectrum of being slightly clairvoyant. you could have had your head bashed in as a toddler and survived. You know, like, one of the reasons why survivors make art, and being different means that you're a bit of a survivor, it isn't minority specialness. It's more like people that get born into situations where their very identity and being is challenged have a much harder time fashioning and healing around a sense of core true self. And I keep banging on about that being the soul. So what happens to most people that have been very damaged by the status quo is they end up reinventing themselves in another context of inner cognitions. But sometimes that reinvention holds more truth about the situation that they were in, the wider psychic, environmental and cultural forces that put them in that situation. There's a certain truth-telling on a feeling-based level. And I think that truth-telling becomes less about the individual making the artwork, and it becomes more of a sort of holistic impulse in the group dynamic itself. Sometimes, when people spend a long time working into who they are. And then it becomes less about the difference or the problem and more about the opportunity of what is true and what is false. But the greatest challenge of this process, my friend, is the communication with the outside world, who may be trundling along in exactly the same way, maiming and damaging as it goes. Probably is being part of empire, right? We're talking about institutional, dysfunctional adherence to, global technocracy is something I bang on about. Mind jail. So the dehumanizing aspects of how to get on. So, those things sound dystopian and political. But what I'm talking about is simply having some integrity in your own inner process with what you're doing and what I'm doing. And, it's actually quite difficult to locate that when one's starting again, because ideas of adaptation and mimicry and getting it right for others occur, like some doppelganger, like some inverted version of the self. So I often find that a sense of sacrifice and deconstruction of my own intent feels more real. There's an inherent failure to that allows a regrowth. And, cyclic catastrophe on a meta scale. So, again, playing on command to please others for their collections, maintaining some notion of expectation, and also growing and adapting in a alchemic connection with yourself without actually going mad. And it's incredibly difficult. And one of the most wonderful ways to go to hell regularly. And dissolution of the self and enjoying that to a point becomes a wondrous experience as well, because beyond the social construct, beyond the psychobabble of early childhood and beyond the scaremongering of shadows in New Zealand, there's higher power, essentially. And does it really matter if anyone else, knows that what you're doing makes sense to you at the time? Does it really matter? Does it really matter if there's a insect colony that's mutating to a different genus that no one's noticed? Not sure. Art's mysterious. It is actually an outgrowth of DNA's very own intelligence. But not to overstate making stuff in the studio, or putting wood chips on your veggie garden to keep the weeds down, which is what I'm actually about to do, or maybe have some porridge. These incorrect missions, these correct missions, these uncorrect permissions, the permission to be uncorrect, be received in a way that is possibly impossible to be. But here we are all bumblebees that fly, there's more to it than strangelets and quarks, these fields and waves, and anyway, thank you for entertaining my chat this morning around art issues. Cheers. We have high hopes.